In the Ninjask video, you saw that Shedinja had been cut to streamline the playstyle of that deck and make more room for fossils. Now Shedinja is back and it is taking center stage in its own form of stall. And maybe you're gonna be the one that saves me, because the name of this deck is Wonderwall. It is all about that Wonder Guard Pokebody that completely walls certain decks. Wonder Guard prevents all damage from attacks and all effects of attacks as long as they are coming from your opponent's evolved Pokemon and Pokemon EX. Just a little note about the 2004 format, almost everything viable in format is an evolved Pokemon or a Pokemon EX. So Wonder Guard essentially forces your opponents to not evolve their Pokemon and just leave a Skitty in play or a Trico in play and slowly ping you to death with those attacks that only deal 10 or 20 damage. Shedinja does only have 30 HP, so it's not going to last in the active position forever. But there are ways to heal off damage, and there are very few basic non-EX Pokemon in format that can actually OHKO a Shedinja. To ensure that Shedinja can completely wall your opponent's deck, it does require some support from other Pokemon and trainer cards. That's what we're here to talk about today. Let's jump straight into the deck list for Wonderwall. We will be beginning our Pokemon lineup with that Nincada from EX Dragon. What's most important here is that it has 50 HP. Aside from the 4 Nincada, we're also going to be using 2 Ninjask. Ninjask does have this loose shell Poke Power that we talked about in the Ninjask video, where when you play it from your hand to evolve Nincada, you can search your deck for Shedinja and put it onto the bench as a basic Pokemon. But your goal is going to be getting those Shedinja into play either through Ninjask or through evolution off of Nincada. We already talked about it in the intro. Shedinja has Wonder Guard, which is going to prevent all the effects of attacks, including damage, done to Shedinja from your opponent's evolved Pokemon and your Pokemon EX. The entire goal of the deck is to force them into using their Prevolution. They have to attack you with their Ralts instead of their Gardevoir. They have to attack you with their Torchics instead of their Blazikens. You get the idea. It forces them into a situation that is not their normal play style. It actually punishes them for playing very quickly and rare candying up into these big Pokemon, because then they can't do anything to you. And then they have to backtrack, search up another Bagon or a Horsey from their deck that they can actually attack you with. And by then you've gotten your setup, and they're going to be dealing 10-20 damage at a time, which this deck can heal off. We'll get to that in a second, but you're also going to be alternating in and out of a Shedinja with Ninjask, dealing 30 damage. This deck can take 6 prizes, but that's not really the point. You don't have to take those 6 prizes. This is a stall deck. The 2004 season is very conducive to stall, and you'll see that as more videos come out. Getting this Shedinja into the active position is what you're looking for, because it's just going to shut down so many decks and force them into a position that they're not used to. Now, in the support portion of this deck, we have maybe one of the best cards of the entire EX era, which is this Dunsparce, this very unassuming Dunsparce. It has the strike and run attack for 1 colorless energy. Search your deck for up to 3 basic Pokemon and put them on your bench. Shuffle your deck, and then you can switch Dunsparce with one of your bench Pokemon. So for 1 colorless energy, you are getting 3 basic Pokemon on your bench, and you're getting a warp point for yourself. Such a good attack for 1 energy. It's no wonder that Dunsparce makes its way into so many decks. For this deck in particular, that's going to allow you to grab a Nincada, a Natu, and a Sentret all in one go, and you have half of your setup for the game. So good. Next up for support is Natu. Not a whole lot to talk about here other than it's going to evolve up into Xatu. Xatu will not be attacking, it is going to sit on your bench. Even if it gets gusted or warped into the active position, it has free retreat, which is amazing for this deck, since you're going to be doing a lot of hit and run. The reason Xatu is in this deck is for its Healing Wind Poke Power. Once during your turn, you can remove 1 damage counter from each of your active Pokemon. We're not playing doubles format here, so it's only going to be the 1 Shedinja in the active position. This is stackable. Now, because this is a stall wall deck, we're going to be looking at Sentret and Furret here. because Furret is going to be your outlet to keep you from decking out. Scavenger Hunt is an amazing poke power on Furret, especially if you're using special energy cards, but that's not the purpose in this deck. In this deck, it is the method by which you stop yourself from decking out, because you can put 2 cards from your hand into your deck and pull 1 card out. If you don't have any energy cards left in your deck, then you're essentially just putting 2 cards back, which buys you 2 more turns, and you can just do that every turn. So it's a pretty straightforward gameplay plan, especially when you look at your supporter base. So starting with Copycat, it's going to let you draw cards. Steven's Advice, it's going to let you draw cards. Professor Oak's Research, it's going to let you draw cards. Underground Expedition is going to let you draw cards. Lots of draw, because you don't have to do anything fancy here. You really just have to get a Shedinja into play and at least 1 Xatu on the bench, and then you're set, because your opponent can't evolve up into Pokemon, otherwise they can't attack a Shedinja, so they're going to have to stick to their basics, dealing 10 or 20 damage, and then Xatu's going to heal that off. Now, to help you get your Shedinjas, your Ninjas, your Xatu, you got Professor Elm's training method in here. A couple of those are going to help. Fastball's also going to be a quick way to just dig through your deck for those key evolution cards. And then we do have 2 copies of Ancient Technical Machine Rock here for that ability to de-evolve your opponent's Pokemon when it makes sense. Now, it seems a little counterintuitive for this deck, because you want your opponent to evolve, then they can't touch your Shedinja, but there are going to be cases where your opponent rare candied up into a Blaziken, and you've stacked, 90 damage on it with Ninjask. Yeah, Ancient Technical Machine is just going to let you devolve and get that Torchic out of play. This deck also gets to fully utilize Low Pressure System. This might be the best bang for your buck anyone's ever going to get out of Low Pressure System. Your Grass Pokemon are going to have an extra 10 HP. So Shedinja gets bumped up to 40, meaning that Xatu has a little more room to heal off each turn, and that Shedinja is going to last way longer. It's going to get that extra mileage out of that 10 HP and really make your opponent hate sitting across the table from you. There's also 1 copy of Desert Ruins in here, just to expedite matches against EX Pokemon, especially if they are evolved EX Pokemon, because you don't want to sit there forever. Desert Ruins can help you get to 6 prizes if you do have that win con set up. Over in the energy base, we do have 8 basic grass energy and 4 warp energy. Warp energy is going to be useful for getting you out of some sticky situations where, say, your opponent hits you with an attack that only deals 10 damage, but that attack also poisons you. So in that case, you do want to warp that Shedinja out of the active position, get one of your free retreaters in there like Xatu, and then just swap it right back out for Shedinja. Warp Energy is just there for the assist. Even though the setup for this deck is incredibly simple and incredibly effective, if your opponent doesn't know how to play against it or they're not prepared for it, it is very easy to play around, because the EX era has a lot of Pokemon that can snipe. If you take Swampert EX, for example, it can use Crushing Wave to just knock out everything on your bench, just attacking around Shedinja every single turn, and Shedinja is going to take a long time to knock out a Swampert EX. Look at that 150 HP sitting up there in the corner. Shift Tree completely shuts down this deck just by existing. Feint Attack not only snipes, Feint Attack also ignores Pokebody, so it can just knock out Shedinjas no problem. Not to mention the fact that C-Dot can OHKO a Shedinja on its own. The 50 HP Skitty is another commonly played Pokemon that can do the same. Overall, it's a fun gimmick, and it can catch your opponent off guard, but after they've played it a couple of times, it gets pretty easy to play around. An alternative mode could be having some fun with Gengar, changing your energy pool to be Psychic. That way you can fully utilize Gengar and Xatu as alternative attackers. This adds a little more complexity, but honestly, in the 2004 format, there's just more powerful, more consistent forms of stall. That's going to be all for today. Let me know what you thought about this build down below. Also, let me know any potential combos I may be missing that Shedinja works in. Stay tuned to the channel for lots more content coming down the pipe. Hit me up with any suggestions or requests you have for the EX era. I'll see you next time.